Okay, can everyone see that all right? Does that seem to be in focus? All right, good deal. Well, I appreciate our worship this morning. And I believe this is where we left off. I think we actually went through this. I think we actually went through 10a and through 10c. I think that's talking about the the earth and it's crying out to be sanctified and so forth. And so I think that's we had completed that. And let's see here. We'll start off at 10d through 10f. Is there anyone who would like to read 10d through 10f? Sister Carol.
And it came to pass that Enoch continued his cry unto the Lord, saying, I ask you, O Lord, in the name of your only begotten, even Jesus Christ, that you will have mercy upon Noah and his seed, that the earth might never more be covered by the floods. And the Lord could not withhold, and he covenanted with Enoch, and swore unto him with an oath, that he would stay the floods, that he would call upon the children of Noah. And he sent forth an unalterable decree, that a remnant of his seed should always be found among all nations while the earth should stand.
That's quite a promise that was set there. So what do you see that jumps out at you there in those verses? What's that? Always found, okay. Yeah, among all nations, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because you look at it and you look at the tribes and so forth, and you see where we are today, and that's pretty much true, isn't it? You can probably find just about all the tribes in just about all the nations, if you were to really look. And the whole earth in itself, really, there aren't as many, well, I don't know that you could say that there are any pure tribes or folks that are out there nationality-wise and so forth, because there's been so much intermarrying over the years. Well, that certainly did come true. Yes. Yes. That's interesting, isn't it? What do you think that means?
Well, I thought we weren't supposed to do oaths, but we do it in Boy Scouts, the presidency oath, right? I think it's called an oath. And I guess I just don't know what he's actually saying, because, you can make an oath with the devil, and you can swear unto him with an oath, so...
Yeah, I think in this context, I don't think it quite means the same words. Alex, you want to?
Usually it's in reference with covenants. Whenever it talks about the priesthood covenant, it says that it is an oath and a covenant. And so it's just the promise portion of a covenant, the way that I've studied it. Because a covenant is an agreement of sorts. And so your oath is basic, your pledge to uphold it. So like, for instance, when Joshua was, had just crossed the Jordan with everybody, when he said, okay, for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. But if we ever get to a point in time where we don't serve the Lord, may the Lord destroy us. And all the children of Israel said, yep, we agree with you. May the Lord just take us out if we disobey him again. And so that was an oath and a covenant that they had made that day.
Yeah. So I think the other confusion, I know what you're saying about that. I remember thinking about that a lot too, wasn't that we weren't supposed to swear by the heavens or by our Lord and so forth. And the word swore and swear have multiple meanings in them. Unfortunately, the English language is such that it doesn't mean, for instance, like cursing or whatever. It can also just simply mean declaration. It means I'm declaring that, so you could go in there and you could say, and Enoch declared unto him with an oath, instead of using the word swore. So there's a lot of different things that I found over the years. Just like my favorite one was to say, when I was a boy, it drove me nuts. It was that we were not supposed to, fears of the devil, as it says in the New Testament. But then, you're supposed to fear the Lord your God. And it was like, well, wait a minute, how in the world does that work? And it took me a little while to understand that the language is not precise, and that that's not what was really being said. Fear in that particular instance was respect. You should respect the Lord thy God, and that's what, for instance, even in Proverbs, when it talks about that, it's referring to respect. So we kind of have to watch, and then that's, I could go down this whole buggy ride with you on this, but it's kind of one of these things where, when we talk about the translation that Joseph needed to do and what the Lord had him do, and we know what it would be like if we didn't have that, but there's even more with our language that is, here again, it doesn't have that precision that sometimes helps us understand, because it's many times it's spoken in the colloquial English and using idioms that everyone understands of that day, and that phraseology, those things that are said, everyone knows about it, and if you were from that time period. But if you're not from that time period in that part of the world, you may not entirely understand it. So just like my Canadian friends, I remember the first time I was up in Canada, and got to spend several weeks with them up there, and we were going back and forth, and he says, well, we'll get this done and we'll be laughing. We'll be laughing? Why will we be laughing? I didn't realize it was just something they'd say. We would say something like, we'll get this done and it'll be great. We all have different idioms and things that we say, and sometimes it gets there. Yes?
I have two things. First, I was thinking about, if you go to court, you swear to tell the truth so help you God.
Mm-hmm.
And look how many people don't do that. Even though you swear it in court, look how many times people don't tell the truth. So to say that the Lord swore an oath, I think we can count on his oath being true. Man's, I don't know. The other thing I thought of is, I am glad that Enoch was the type of man he was to be able to receive that oath from God, or we might still be facing floods.
Yes, absolutely. That's a thing that I've come to understand and realize over the years, I think as we all have, is that you certainly can have faith in God. There's no question about it, but you can't have faith in man as much as you want to. So, yes.
Well, kind of between what Alex and Carol said, I had a thought. As Alex said, an oath is a covenant. And in those days, a covenant was unbreakable. If you made an oath, you followed through. And even if, like in Joshua's case, he made an oath with people who had deceived him, and he went to the Lord, do I have to follow through on that? Do I have to fight for them? The Lord said, yes, a covenant is a covenant. So in those days, an oath meant something.
Yeah, it was a binding contract that you will do this. And the cost to you was much greater than it was the cost to them, it seemed. Especially if you were in a position of authority. And you see that with the different kings and different rulers, that they would get tricked into saying something or covenanting with someone, or bringing an oath with someone, and not realizing at the time that something bad was going to happen, and were really sorry that they had to keep their word, because it was a huge thing. The one that kind of gets me was, what was it? Leah and Rachel. I was also thinking, oh, yeah. So go ahead and say that again in the microphone.
The book of Esther, when King Ahasuerus was tricked by Haman to make a decree by the kings of Persia and the Medes that all these people that were, odious would be killed, on such and such a day. And he didn't realize what he was doing at that point, and then he regretted it. But obviously things got turned around. That he just allowed them to arm themselves, but it was still a horrible thing, and he should have never done it in the first place.
Right, exactly. And so you can see why, if you were a ruler, you wanted to be tight-lipped about what was going on. I was trying to think, there was a story in the Book of Mormon I was thinking of, but I keep getting the young damsel in John the Baptist, the whole thing, that story in my head. But there's also one where Charlotte was in your book, where she basically, you looked into her and you were talking about how she probably was looking for her father's
Yes, you're talking
Yeah.
about the Jaredite.
it's in the Book of Ether.
It's the princess.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
I can't think of it. Oh, that's all right. But I didn't mean to go down there. But it's here again, just another situation where a ruler gets tied into things, and it's very difficult sometimes to undo what you said. All right. Very good conversation. Let's move on here. All right, 10G through 10 or 11A. Someone like to read that? Okay. Brother Craig.
And the Lord said, Blessed is he whose seed Messiah shall come. For he says, I am Messiah, the King of Zion, the rock of heaven, which is broad as eternity. Whoso comes in at the gate and climbs up by me shall never fall. Wherefore blessed are they of whom I have spoken, for they shall come forth with songs of everlasting joy. And it came to pass that Enoch cried unto the Lord, saying, When the Son of Man comes in the flesh, shall the earth rest? I pray you show me these things.
I can't help but, 11 always kind of gets me, because it's like I would have thought the same thing. I would have thought, oh my goodness, if the Savior's coming, then that means that the earth is going to get a chance to rest. Everything's going to be right again, right? Because Jesus is coming, the Messiah, he's coming. But that's not how the Lord chooses to do things. And you see that in many ways. Of course, we all know the story that, that everyone, thought that Christ was going to come, as the rampant lion, and basically take care of those Romans and everybody else who was an enemy to Israel. But that's not what he did. He came to save their souls, which was a greater thing. Okay. Anybody else have some thoughts about what was said here? I thought 10H was really interesting. We've heard that before, haven't we? Okay. Well, all I would say about 10H is that, you certainly, we're told that, in the scriptures that, you can't really, you have to come in at the gate, and he climbs up by me, shall never fail or fall. So, it's kind of that, you can't go another way to get to heaven. You can't go any other way. You've got to come that one direction, one way. Okay. And I love how he states, I am Messiah, the King of Zion. The King. Yes.
That's another proof that Peter was not the rock.
Yes, it is. That's a very, very good point. Because when you go down in the route of Catholicism and so forth, that's where they tend to drift off. And so actually the The LDS actually go down that road too. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but I won't take you down that road. But yeah, they do. They go down the Pauline. You want to argue that?
Yeah, because I thought that originally too, and that's not where they got it.
Oh, where'd they get it?
No, they believe that, at least generally speaking, that it went to James afterwards, not Peter. No, their whole idea of apostolic succession's a new dispensationalism idea. It's not something they
Oh.
try to found in history.
So it's even worse than I thought.
Yes, it's worse.
Oh, wow.
No, their plea was that in the alleged Council of 50 that Joseph showed up and delivered the keys to the 12 and said, we're no longer going to have a presidency after I die. I'm going to let you guys have the keys. And whenever Sidney Rigdon at the conference after Joseph's death said, there was no such meeting, and they're like, well, you just weren't privileged enough to be in those Council of 50 meetings kind of thing. And he was just like, this is not how the church is set up. It's the first presidency. I'm still here. I'm still a president of the church. And then Brigham gets up and basically says, well, Joseph was just such a wonderful man. Nobody could ever replace him. So that's why Joseph gave the keys to 12 men rather than, one. So are you telling everybody that you're as good as Joseph? And he just made it this big emotional thing, and that's
Oh,
where
yeah.
it came from.
Political theater.
Yes.
Yeah. Explain a little bit what the Council of 50 is, because I imagine there's a number of people that don't know. There's some that I probably saw recognition.
Well, so the LDS Church apparently had these meeting notes that were locked, in the first presidency till I don't know, not even 30 years ago. It's something that they didn't allow anybody to look at, review, criticize, whatever, for generations. And then all of a sudden they just decided one day, okay, well, we're going to hand this over to the Joseph Smith Papers people and let them evaluate it, look over it, print it, publish it, distribute it, all that. But it's this group of people, of 50 people that supposedly met in Nauvoo in the late period, and their mission was to make Joseph king of the world so that way Brigham could be, the president in the United States. And it was this really kind of scary little group that reminded me of the Masons, to be honest. And ironically enough, nobody who went to the RLDS ever said anything about this council even existing. The only people on this council were people who went with the LDS Church, save it be maybe a couple of people. But I think it's very convenient that the LDS presidency kept the manual or the notes of these meetings private and secret until everybody was dead and gone who could have basically vouched for it and said whether it really was there or not. By at least 100 years. They put William Marks's name on the list, and William Marks never said a word about having these secret meetings.
Well,
Sidney Rigdon was not in those meetings. Emma was not invited to those meetings. Nobody that we consider creditable.
But let's back up a little bit here. So what this was, and when you really look at the charter of what they were doing, when you really read what it is, you can find some clues of it in the Times and Seasons. You can find clues in other areas, oh golly, I'm trying to think of where. I'm sorry, I'm going off into where the reference was, but irregardless of the reference at this point, basically, how you have a city council, and we're talking about, okay, we need to talk about development of the city, and we need to make sure that we don't have too many oxen going this direction. We need to water people over here, and we're going to have a furrowway through here, and we're going to set up different things like that. That's what the Council of 50, in my argument, really was. And they're trying to make it out that it was a secret, spiritual whatever. And I'm like, no, it was a city council meeting. It was a city council, and that's why I believe there's so much cloak and dagger behind all the whatever. Yeah, I think that a bunch of the members of the Council of 50 did get together and were conspiring to do the things that Alex is talking about, but it was really more a city council. It had no theocratic backing. Where in the scriptures do you find the Council of 50? Where's the revelation for it? Oh, there isn't any. So that's why I wanted you to bring that up. If
Yeah,
you ever
well,
hear the Council of 50,
They proclaim it was the sacred thing they were doing to take the
Yeah.
mission of the church, and it was a secret, private thing that nobody knew about, and that's why you didn't hear about it anywhere else, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
and it's like, no, it was definitely.
no,
I don't think it ever happened that way.
no, like I say, I think it was a bunch of people. I think there's some truth in the lie, and the truth in the lie was it was a city council meeting that a bunch of guys decided, hey, you know what? While Joseph's in jail, while whatever's going on, why don't we do what we want to go do? And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
Because if they wanted it corroborated, they certainly would have done so. And you're right, William Marks would not have been shy about saying where he was at in that whole thing, good or ill. I think he would have been honest and upright about it in that respect. Okay, well, hopefully you found that interesting. All right, let's move on to, oh, I'm sorry, was there anything else anybody else wanted to say on this? Okay. All right, 11B through 11D. Is there anyone who would like to read that? Oh, yes, Sister Ray.
11b. And the Lord said unto Enoch, Look, and he looked, and beheld the Son of Man lifted up on the cross after the manner of men. And he heard a loud voice, and the heavens were veiled, and all the creations of God mourned, and the earth groaned, and the rocks were rent. And the saints arose and were crowned at the right hand of the Son of Man with crowns of glory. And as many of the spirits as were in prison came forth and stood on the right hand of God, and the remainder were reserved in the chains of darkness until the judgment of the great day. And again Enoch wept and cried unto the Lord, saying, When shall the earth rest?
So a little bit going on there. What are your thoughts? Yes,
It says those who were in prison came forth, and the remainder were reserved in chains. So we think of them being in the prison house until, they're resurrected, but where were the remainder? Is there a prison house and then a deeper hell?
Well, definitely, we do believe that there are levels of hell. We don't know much about it. That's about all I can say in that. Did you want to say something on that? I don't have to put you out. If you don't want to, it's fine. Okay.
Story behind that. My understanding is that if they have not had the chance to make the decision on earth,
Mhm.
that they haven't heard the gospel, that they're sent to the prison house to be taught.
Mhm.
And they have the same opportunity then to choose that we have, having had the chance to hear the gospel here. And that there will be some who will then choose to follow Christ and to obey the commandments of God, and there will be those still who do not. And the ones who do not come forth in the first resurrection.
Mhm. Yeah, and Alex, you want to?
Yeah, I studied a lot of what Artis is talking about, and it seems like there's a definite difference when you like analyze 76 a lot deeper in the glories, where there's a huge difference on those in the prison house who were ignorant, willfully ignorant, and resistant. They go to different places in the end. Even though they all were in the prison house to be taught,
Right.
those who resisted the word don't have a chance for celestial. But those who were ignorant, they're going to be taught, and they do have a chance for that first resurrection. So I don't know if, as you said, we don't know enough about it, but it's like it may not be something that's a physical separation of, being boundaries in in hell. It may just be what we're talking about. It may be the difference of, well, these people are being taught and they have an opportunity, because they didn't know. They never had an opportunity, versus people who, they knew, they just didn't want to follow it.
Yeah. So what I would say is that when you get down to this situation in this scripture, one, you can look back what happened in the New Testament, and there were those that did, the graves were open, and those that did come forth. But, and I think to some degree that's what that's referring to, but also I think what you'll see is that Alma's discourse to Corianton, because he makes a statement there that I think is not insignificant, and he says, whether there is one resurrection or many, I don't know. I'm going to paraphrase. He says, I don't know. He says, suffices to say there's going to be, the resurrection of, the just and the unjust, basically. And that's kind of how he leaves that. And so it kind of makes sense to me what's being said there. But, it's it kind of comes down to that. We all don't know everything. And to your point about Section 76, we don't know much about hell. And the reason we don't is because we were told that it's specifically for those who are going there. And they're the ones who will know, and we don't. And I'm thinking that's probably a good thing when you think about it, because it might be something you can't unsee, if you know what I mean. So it's hard to imagine something that horrifying and horrific, but perhaps it is. I don't know.
Well, my thought was, it says those who were in prison, like all of the ones in prison came forward, but the remainder were reserved. It sounds to me like there's some place besides the prison where those that came forth were. So I'm just saying, it sounds to me like there's another place where they kept the ones who weren't responsive. Because I know all about the division.
Yeah, right. I knew you do. So yeah.
I was thinking about the physical place more.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Brother Bob?
Well, I was just going to say that those reserved in chains until the Judgment Day also include the sons of perdition.
Yes.
And those are people that have heard the gospel of Christ and just rejected it out of hand, don't want anything to do with it. And they're not going to come forth in any resurrection. They're going right straight to the eternal judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a very sad thing. A very solemn thing. All right. Let's see here. Was there any other thoughts here before I move on? Okay. So, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so 12A through 12C. Would somebody like to read that? Okay. Sister Audrey? Yeah, right here.
And Enoch beheld the Son of Man ascend up unto the Father, and be called unto the Lord, saying, Will you not come again upon the earth? For inasmuch as you are God, and I know you, and you have sworn unto me and commanded me that I should ask the name of your only begotten, you have made me and given me a right to your throne, and not of myself, but through your own grace. Wherefore I ask you if you will not come again on the earth. And the Lord said unto Enoch, As I live, even so will I come in the last days, in the days of wickedness and vengeance, to fulfill the oath which I made unto you concerning the children of Noah.
Okay. Thoughts? I think 12B is kind of telling in my mind that here he is standing before the Lord, and he makes a statement that you have made me and given unto me a right to your throne, and not of myself, but through your own grace. Thought that was interesting that he would say that, because the Lord knew what he, was going to say and so forth. But I thought it was interesting that he wanted to be very clear what he was saying with the Lord, even though I think at this point, you know, having this kind of an experience, Lord knows what you're thinking. It's not a matter of you can hide it with words. That's irrelevant at that point. But I thought it was interesting that he was very, very precise and very clear that it's through your grace. And I think in some ways, to me, that's his way of saying thank you in another way. I think also it would have been, yes,
What does it mean when it says there in 17b, you have made me and given unto me a right to your throne? How does he mean that? A right
you mean
to God's
12b?
throne or what?
Well, so what he's referring to is that given to me a right to your throne. It kind of comes into the, you know, that we become brothers and sisters with Christ. We actually have that kinship with him, that we could be called that. We're not him, of course, and we're not going to take his place, but it all belongs to him anyway when you get down to it, right? There's nothing we own. We're the created. So
If we're talking to Jesus, not God.
well, the problem is it switches back and forth a little bit here and there.
Oh.
And the reason it's going to is because you have to look at the Godhead in that respect. Christ is in perfect harmony. He is obedient to the Father's will completely. And so you're going to see that there's really not much difference between the two when it comes to that in that respect, although they are separate entities. Yes.
I don't view this as a right to the throne as in like what we might first think as in right to sit in it ourselves. I look at this as more of a right to have audience. God has an open door policy, you know, that we have the right to commune with him. And while he's the one who sits on the throne. You know, whenever you talk about a throne in older contexts, it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, the chair itself. The throne might be, you know, the entire presence or room in which, you know, the person sits upon. And so a right to the throne is just that. It's I'm granting you access to me.
It's how I visualize it. I mean, you know, you can look at the Father and the Son and you see them there, say, for instance, in thrones. You could see also, and some people have, I think back to the Chronicles of Narnia and so forth, that there could be smaller thrones down below that you sit in that throne. That still belongs to him. It's still, ownership is still there, but you having that. It is a little disconcerting sometimes that, you know, the words that are there, because when we talk about sharing and so forth with God, because knowing who we are and what we are, I'm intimidated by that language. The more I know about him and who he is and what I am and who I am. So I can appreciate what's being said. Yes, Brother Bob.
Well, Craig mentioned earlier Esther. She was the queen over all the land, and yet she could not go in and see the king unless he granted her special access to come in.
It's true.
And he would do that by pointing his scepter at her, and then she could approach him. But until then, she couldn't do that, even though she was queen second to him over all the land. She couldn't do that. She had to have special permission to come.
Yeah. And we see that that's a very common theme, even in the Book of Mormon, where we talk about the story of Ammon. You know, when he saw that the countenance of the king was changed, he was like, oh, I'm going to go. You know, and then he says, oh, hey, don't go anywhere, Ammon. You know, to your point, you need to be invited in. That scepter needs to be pointed at you. So, okay. Good conversation. Any more thoughts? the one thing I was going to say, and it's kind of the verse before, is that it must have been incredibly hard for Enoch to watch Christ being put upon the cross. Because you know that he didn't just see it, he felt it, and he understood it. And that must have been extremely hard for him to see that in that moment. I question whether he was able to keep his composure because you think about everything that is said. It's you get some hints of that because the ancient prophets talking about, behold, I am undone. I get that because you see things that are too great, and you don't just see them, you understand them three-dimensionally in a way that is even more than if you were there, because you understand what's going on and why it's going on. That had to be a profound marked change upon those prophets. Okay. 12D through 12F. Would someone like to read that? We're making some good time, good progress. This is good. Because I was worried we weren't going to get through section 36 here, this month. And maybe we can. I don't know. Okay. I'll read one here for you. And the day shall come that the earth shall rest, but before that day shall the heavens be darkened, and a veil of darkness shall cover the earth. And the heavens shall shake, and also the earth, and great tribulation shall be among the children of men. But my people will I preserve, and righteousness will I send down out of heaven, and truth will I send forth out of the earth, to bear testimony of my only begotten, his resurrection from the dead, yea, and also the resurrection of all men, and righteousness and truth will I cause to sweep the earth as with a flood, to gather out mine own elect from the four quarters of the earth, until a place which I shall prepare. Okay, thank you. So, there's a lot there. What are your thoughts on that? Yes, Sister Carol.
I may be way off field there, but it came to my mind in 12D where they talked about a veil of darkness shall cover the earth. And, what's his name? Bill Gates, with his idea of putting something into the atmosphere to dim the sun, to cause the climate change to decrease, etc. I don't know if you've heard anything about it, but that's what came to my mind, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not.
It's just like that guy that can't remember his name in Greek mythology, that he made wings with wax and feathers, and he flew. I don't believe it. Sorry. Yes.
Well, actually, this is right after he's talking about seeing Christ die. Okay, so we're all the way, this is Enoch, which was long before Christ was born. He's seen that, he's seen him die. Well, we know this was fulfilled. I mean, the New Testament just gives a very little short thing about it, but in the Book of Mormon, we have the earthquakes, the 3 days of darkness, all that actually happened, and all this was fulfilled in that.
Okay. Sister Artis?
And the words that I always hold on to out of that section are, but my people will I preserve. And my thought is, I always want to be part of his people.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I want to be on God's side. I'm trying to remember, was that Admiral Halsey that said that? Said, because there was a young man who stood up and said, God's on our side. He says, oh, no. He says, in war, he says, that's not how that works. He says, we pray that we are on God's side. it was very humbling, very, very wise words that he said. I wish I could remember the quote, but it always goes through my head because, you know, the young man gives us declaration that, you know, we're fighting for God. We're the ones who are right. We're the ones who are righteous. And it's just like, yeah, not so much. Yes, Sister Carol.
I understand what Shelley was saying, but when you put 12D and 12E together, it sounds like it's all going to be occurring at the same time. I still feel that the heavens will be darkened, the veil of darkness shall cover the earth, the heavens shall shake, great tribulations. I think that's all going to come yet.
Yeah. In this context, you could take it either way. You could, but I think that I was leaning towards the latter of that. You know, certainly these events did occur when Christ was brought, but I also believe that these are the events to come because they basically mirror those as well. So if you look at that, that's exactly what also would happen as well. And I think it's interesting that he says here, I'm watching my time here, although I'm not worried about the guy that I'm going to cut in on his time. So, yeah, I'm sure he'll forgive me. So, but the interesting thing here I see is that, and also the resurrection of all men. You know, that's what's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't matter who you were and what you did and where you're at. Everyone will be resurrected for a moment, and then that judgment, and then the assignment, the proclamation, the judgment. Okay, well, I'm right at time, so we are at 12G. And I thank you all for your comments. They're very helpful, and appreciate your guys' studying, and let's make preparation for the service to come.